Nerd Night, Brain Injuries and Recovery.
So I'm a physical therapist, and I work with people who have traumatic brain injuries. So tonight, I'm not going to talk about physical therapy. I'm sorry, I can't solve all of your physical ailments tonight. But I am going to talk about the cognitive impairments of brain injury, because when you're walking down the road, you can easily see somebody who's in a wheelchair or with a walker, or somebody that has a limp. So you can see those physical impairments, but you can't see what's going on in their brain. You can't see the cognitive side of things. So I'll focus on that. Every day I work with these people, and every day I have a new story to tell. So I'm going to share those stories with you tonight. Some of them are personal about my mom, but most of them are about the patients I work with every day. And a lot of times in difficult situations, we turn to humor to help get us through. So these stories are humorous to us now, but what I want you to get out of it is kind of more what happens when you have a brain injury. What are the side effects, and what do you see that is underneath and underlying? So I'm going to give these people nicknames, and I hope you enjoy them. So this is your brain. And this is my brain. Oh, it looks like this, I promise. It's color-coded and everything. So the frontal, I'm going to give you a brief description of the brain. Now, this is very brief. So the frontal lobe controls your personality, and it controls your judgment. It also acts as your filter. So when you are drinking beer, if you have one too many, maybe you let something slip out that maybe you wouldn't normally say. Thank you. That's because alcohol inhibits your frontal lobe. So the parietal lobe controls your movement and your sensory. And then we have the temporal lobe, which is here on the side, and language is housed there. So sometimes when that's injured, weird things happen. So when people can't think about what they're going to say, so you'll introduce yourself, you're like, hey, how's your day going? And they go, oh, cornflakes and peanut butter. And they answer with complete confidence that they said the right thing to your question. And then we have the occipital lobe in the back. It's way back here. That controls your vision. And lots of different things happen with that. So going on to memory. Memory is housed in your hippocampus. Please don't confuse it with the university. When my mom got injured, so she had a seizure and she fell. She hit her head, and she went through a few months in the hospital and at home, and then she had another seizure. And in between those two seizures, she doesn't remember anything that happened. So she only remembers what we tell her, like when she was in the hospital and the nurse's phone would ring over and over again. So she'd go, hello, because no one would answer the nurse's station phone. So I have another friend that I work with. I'm going to call him Mr. Forgetful. So Mr. Forgetful's memory is very impaired. So every time I go to the house to see him, he asks me, what am I doing today? And I tell him, we're going to do therapy today. So we stand up, we walk to the mat table, and he goes, what am I doing today? I tell him, we're doing physical therapy today. So we sit down, we lay down, we start stretching. He lifts his head up, he says, what am I doing today? I said, we're stretching. That's what we're doing today. And so he lifts his head up again, about 3 seconds later, and says, what am I doing today? I said, you're going to put your head on the pillow. That's what you're doing today. So he puts his head on the pillow, and if I'm lucky, I'll get another 5 seconds. And then he lifts his head up and says, what am I doing today? And this continues throughout most of our session. So even though his memory is profoundly impacted, he still lives in one of our group homes, and we care for him every day. So another side effect of brain injury is anger and aggression. So we're going to call this guy angry. And my angry patient, he gets his name because every time I worked with him, I could not calm him down. Every time we'd be stretching, he'd start yelling at me. So I'd approach our sessions, and he'd be sitting in the chair, he'd be calm with his family, and we'd get over to the mat table. And then all of a sudden, he would just start yelling at me when we're stretching. He'd go, "You motherfucking bitch, you trying to kill me. You're not supposed to kill a patient." said, "You're a motherfucking cocksucker. Well, I see you smirking over there." And he'd just go on and on. And I tried everything with him. I tried putting him in a separate room. I tried calm music. But no matter what I did, I could not get him to calm down. So most of our sessions went on with him yelling at me, and I'd hope that I wasn't disturbing every single person in the clinic. But back to Mr. Forgetful, he also has had anger problems. But because his memory was so impacted, he handled it a lot differently. So you learn with all of your patients, sorry, maybe I've had too many drinks. So you learn with all of your patients how to approach them and how to help them manage their anger and stuff like that. And so with him, we've learned a fun trick. So he would start getting mad, and he tells you, he says, "I'm mad." And he starts banging on something. He says, "I'm mad, goddammit, I'm mad." And you say, "Mr. Forgetful, what's your name?" And he says, "Mr. Forgetful." And you say, "Mr. Forgetful, what color is the sky?" He says, "It's blue." You say, "What color are your eyes?" "It's blue." What's your favorite color?" "It's blue." You go, "Are you mad?" He goes, "No." Because he forgets that he's angry because his memory is so impaired. But it's one way we handle his aggression is by distracting him with rapid fire questions. And we found that out pretty quick. So another side effect of brain injury is awareness. So awareness is really important, because if you don't know that something is wrong, you can't fix it. So if they don't understand kind of what their problems are and acknowledge that they have them, they can't fix them. So I work with one guy, and he is very physically limited. So he needs support for everything he does. We have to help him sit, help him transfer. He can't stand unless we're putting him on a tilt table. So we'll be standing or working on sitting balance. And he'll be sitting, kind of leaning over to one side because he has a really hard time doing it himself. And then he asks us, "When am I going to walk with a cane again?" I said, "Well, we have to work on sitting first. You have to be able to sit before you can stand or walk." He says, "Well, if you just gave me a cane, I'd be able to walk." I said, "No, it doesn't work like that. We have to go through these steps." So it's really important to help people become aware of their injuries. So I have another person, we call him Clueless, not to be confused with this great 90s hit. He has a really hard time planning how to move his body and how to get from one position to another. So we were working a few weeks ago on floor transfers, and I asked him to sit down, and so or sit on the floor, and he starts going like this. And so I ask him, "Is that how you get to the floor?" And he tells me yes, and I'm like, "Okay, well, I'd like to see you get to the floor." And so I ask him to get to the floor again, and he starts going like this. I was like, "Are you there yet?" And he not so quickly found out that that was not going to work for him. So I have to help him step by step figure out how to get to the floor. And it just shows you how much we need to help these people realize their impairments and make them aware of what they can do and what they can't do. So initiation and slowed movement is another side effect of brain injury, another impairment that slows people down. So initiation, when somebody has trouble with initiation, oftentimes it gets confused with laziness because they're not getting up, they're not going to the bathroom, they're not showering on their own. When in reality, it's because initiation was impacted. So these people, they just need kind of a cue. They need someone to help tell them what to do next. And without that cue, they're not going to do it on their own. So I was working with this guy, we'll call him Mr. Sloth. And every time I worked with him, I'd approach him and I'd say, all right, we're going to go do therapy. And a lot of times it would look like this. Okay, stand up. And it would take him this long to stand up from his chair. And then our entire therapy session would take that long with everything I asked him to do. So this same guy, Mr. Sloth, also has frontal lobe damage. And if you remember, your frontal lobe is your filter. So I was on my very first week of the job, fresh out of grad school, and I was warned ahead of time that he could be sexually inappropriate. So I went down, I was like, okay, it'll be fine. We were working together, we were working on a lot of balance, sitting and standing, lots of stuff. So he stopped and he started to look at me. He said, I want to dance. And I was like, oh, we can't dance right now, maybe later, go ahead and have a seat. And he keeps looking at me. And he says, my penis is 6 inches long. So that's not appropriate. He says, I want to put it inside you. I'm like, oh. So he continues, and I try to redirect him, and I tell him, no, that's not appropriate. We can't say these things. Go ahead, have a seat. And I eventually have to, end the session early because he is inappropriate, and we have protocol for this. That every person we put a behavior plan together to try to kind of control these types of behaviors. And then we have attention. Now, attention is really important because if you can't focus on what you're doing and what you're practicing, you can't learn that task. So we'll call him Doug because this guy's name is Doug. And Doug really likes jokes, and he really likes magic tricks. So I was doing an evaluation with Doug, and I quickly found out that he has trigger words. So we'd be working, and I'd say things like dizzy or exhausted or Santa, and all of a sudden he'd start telling me a joke instantly. He couldn't focus on what we were doing. So it was really hard for him, it is really hard for him to kind of keep his attention on the task at hand. Would you guys like to hear a joke?
Yes. Yeah.
Give me a trigger word. I'm going to go with exhausted. So last night I had a dream about a muffler. I woke up exhausted. So you may think a lot of these people can't do things on their own, or they're really impaired. Now, these impairments are just one aspect of their brain injury. They have good days and bad days, just like you and I do. And their impairments, they could completely go away, or they could last their entire life. A brain injury is a really long journey that these people have to go through. So it's our job as rehab therapists to make them comfortable and make them live to their fullest potential. So my company offers various activities such as a work program. So we have a vocational program that allows them to work, and they can do things like knitting, they can make bracelets, they make wooden chairs, all sorts of stuff. And then they sell these things in their store that they have. We also offer outings. So what I forgot to mention was my company, we offer a place for these people to live. So they live in our group homes, and we provide not only therapy, but we provide staff and care for them 24 hours a day. So in these group homes, we offer community outings to try to get them out in the community as much as possible. So we offer things like they go out to the movies on a regular basis, they go to the zoo, they go to a lot of museums. We've taken them kayaking, and we've also taken them skiing. And we have rec therapists, and currently one of our rec therapists is working with our patients because he really, really enjoys soccer. And his favorite team, I just lost the name of it, but they're coming to Ann Arbor in a few months. Thank you. Manchester United. So they're coming to Ann Arbor. So our rec therapist is working really hard with him and his family to buy tickets and go to the soccer game so he can enjoy what he loves. So, if you are interested in learning a little bit more about brain injury and kind of seeing a first-hand perspective, these 2 HBO documentaries are very good. The Crash Reel is about a snowboarder. His name is Kevin Pierce, and he was a very good professional snowboarder around the same time Shaun White was on the rise. They were competitors, but their stories took very different turns because Kevin had a really bad accident and got a brain injury. So this documentary is about his story, and it follows his family and him through the journey. Now, they've recently started a movement called Love Your Brain, and it focuses on meditation. So they've made really good gains in that area. And then the other movie is called Coma. Now, this movie follows 4 different patients with different levels of brain injury, some more severe than others. And it offers a very good insight and sometimes kind of heart-wrenching side to brain injury, and gives you the perspective of the family, but also the perspective of the therapists and how they kind of treat and approach therapy with them. So the main point of this talk is to protect your brain. When you're out there in your car, riding your bike, walking on the side of the road, climbing a ladder, you want to be careful because these things happen. People get injured, and you don't want to hurt yourself and end up like this. So, are there any questions? Yay!
This program was recorded on June 21st, 2018 at Live, 102 South 1st Street, Ann Arbor, Michigan.